Moving on now and talking about the TRC recommendations, looking at progress that has been made so far. The TRC unit in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development was established in 2005 and is mandated to monitor and coordinate the implementation of the government-approved TRC recommendations. We'll take your calls as well on 0891104207, SMSs to 34701, in conversation with Ambassador Dr Seekoe, who is head of the TRC unit in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Dr. Seekoe, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. First and foremost, let me humbly greet your listeners and wish them a very good listening.
Thank you for that. Maybe you can start with just telling us the work of the TRC unit in the Department of Justice.
Yes, okay, thank you. The TRC, as you know, was established in 1995 under the Act for Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation Act of 1995. Now, the duty of the TRC itself was to investigate the abuse, human rights abuses during the apartheid era between the years 1960 and 1994, and then make recommendation to the government on their findings. Yes.
So we know that the recommendations deal with roughly, I would say, 4 areas. There's the final reparations, so the once-off individual grants. There's the symbols and monuments. There were the medical benefits and other forms of social assistance, and the rehabilitation of communities. I think let's start with reparations. How far are we in tracing all of those beneficiaries or the beneficiaries of the beneficiaries?
Good. Actually, to put it straight, the recommendations are far more than that of the TRC. There are many. The main changes that have taken in our prisons, the human rights abuses, institutions, to make sure that everything is now in line with our current constitution. However, for people who were abused, basically, and communities that were abused, there are 4 recommendations, and those are the ones that you mentioned. Now, the first one, as you have requested, is that of individual reparation. Originally, there were far more people than that, but the people that were originally approved by the TRC to apply for reparations were 22,000. But of these 22,000, only approximately 16,000 actually applied. Not that they were denied, applied, no, they just, because there are some who didn't need these reparations because some of them were self-sufficient, etc. And then they gave other reasons also for not applying. And one of those I can quote here easily is Reverend Chikani, for instance. Reverend Chikani didn't see it. He felt that there are people who needed that assistance more than he needed, so he didn't apply.
All right.
Yes.
And those who did, how many of them have been traced? Has it been difficult to trace some of the beneficiaries?
The beneficiaries who applied, I said there were about a little over 16,000. Now, of those little bit over 16,000, today, as I am talking, we are left with slightly over 400.
That haven't been.
That's because we still are trying to trace them.
Yeah.
And those, of course, as you can see, out of really close to over 16,000 or near 17,000, remaining with only about 400 and something. It's about 2.6% of all the people that still remains to be paid.
All right. What are the difficulties that you are finding in tracing people? And I think that's the NPA's missing persons task team. Are they doing that, or is it being done by the members of the unit?
No, the members of the unit. The NPA people, that is the missing persons task team, which was one of the recommendations also of the TRC, that people who disappeared or killed or something under political and mysterious circumstances should be found by the government. And this is why the government decided to appoint a team in the NPA, Priority Crime Litigation. This unit is called the Missing Persons Task Team.
Yeah. And are they primarily involved in searching for those who are missing persons, for example, who might have been missing in exile or missing during the violence that we saw in the early 90s?
Yes, that's so. Yeah, they are looking for such people. Yes.
Before we deal with that element of the recommendations, let's just go back a bit to the reparations. Do you have a cutoff date for when you will stop tracing people, or are you going to?
No. The cutoff, there's no cutoff date because the families needs to know what happened to their loved ones. And where possible, if they can be traced, if they are dead, they will be exhumed and then handed over to the families so that they can be properly buried. Remember, in most cases, when these people disappeared or were killed, when they were buried as people who were not known in graves. So there were no markings or tombstones, etc., to show that there is somebody here. So, and the family, in most cases, families were never informed about such disappearances.
All right. We're going to take some calls as well. On 0891104207, SMSs to 34701. Marjorie, you're with the Kulimani Support Group. Hi, Marjorie.
Good morning, Siti, and good morning, Dr. Seekoe. I'm very glad this discussion is happening because we are sitting with a situation where the TRC unit is remaining with the small list of nearly 17,000 in a situation where there are nearly 100,000 people who have been identified as suffering from the violations that the TRC established as criteria. And our work with lawyers shows that there is nothing in the National Unity and Reconciliation Act to prevent these people from being included in receiving reparations. And we're very concerned that the TRC unit is not allowing people to be registered with them to receive reparations. And we're also concerned that the TRC unit up to now has no provisions for community rehabilitation and especially for the psychosocial interventions that are needed. So we had recent meetings with the TRC unit on the 22nd of March and they agreed to a technical task team, but there's very little progress on actually doing what people on this continent believe, given how highly they regarded the work of the TRC, and we're not fulfilling the potential of the TRC. We're giving military veterans extraordinary benefits. Most of them are getting something like 490,000 Rand special pensions, and a few victims in this country got 30,000 Rand once off. So there are huge divisions and discrepancies being created, and we really need this country to do this work properly. because when you have suffered a gross human rights violation, you are so severely harmed that it is very hard to take advantage of the opportunities of the new South Africa.
Marjorie, on the 22nd of March meeting, were there timelines for the setting up of the technical task team?
The technical task team sat. We asked, we've just been, Kulumani has just been participating in a very interesting meeting at the African Commission for Human and People's Rights that brought together all the countries that have suffered from systemic crimes. And so we requested that the second meeting be delayed until basically yesterday. And the technical task team convened itself without all the members who were nominated to the task team being there. And there are regulations that were gazetted that unfortunately do not begin to redress the urgent needs of victims who suffered the violations that the TRC described as needing reparation if people are going to be able to recover and become reintegrated.
All right.
So we know that there will be a follow-on meeting, but we are finding great intransigence amongst the TRC unit about something so critical, and that the rest of Africa is looking at us to do the right thing by victims of gross human rights violations.
All right. Thanks, Marjorie. I'm going to get a response for you. Thanks, Marjorie, who's with the Kulumani Support Group. How do you respond to that, Dr. Seekoe?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jobson, for your questions. But there are so many of them that once I begin to answer, the 30 minutes will expire before I finalize all that. But I will first start with the community rehabilitation. Yes, the progress has been slow. That one we admit. Because, it takes, we have to, or the law says that we must produce regulations in order to be able to carry that out. Because in order to access what is called the President's funds, you cannot access them just like that. The President is forced to create regulations in order to be able to do that. But this is not only that, even about individual reparations, medical reparations, etc., educational, etc. Each time, regulations have to be created so that it takes time. Our unit is a monitoring unit. It is not really an implementing unit. Individual departments, or what we call relevant departments, are the ones that help us to create those regulations. For instance, housing. I don't know anything about housing. So it is the Department of Housing that knows the intricacies of all that, and therefore must help to create the relevant regulation. The Department of Health similarly must help us to create those regulations. So until such that, let me put it this, let me say this is one of the things that delays the processes, because it's not just that easy to be able to do all that.
So are you finding that it's difficult to get the other government departments to act?
Yes, it's not easy, because to tell you the honest fact, what happens is that suddenly we discover that it's not all the departments that are aware of the demands of the TRC process. So we have to go and explain to them, and once they get it, then they begin to work with us, be able to give their expertise in us creating. But unfortunately, it's a slow process.
And the rehabilitation of communities, I mean, what do the recommendations say there that needs to happen?
Well, yes, the what you call the law says all communities that suffered intense destruction during the apartheid era, or during that period, should be rehabilitated. Some form of rehabilitation must be created. And in order for us to be able to, we need to understand, just now as I'm speaking, we have just signed a contract with the IDT, Independent Development Trust in the Department of Public Works, to be able to help us to carry out that project. Of course, one of the first things they are going to be doing is that will be the first phase, is to do the assessment of all the needs assessment of all those communities. And once there, then we can begin to look forward as to what we are going to be doing after that.
There was another aspect to what Dr. Jobson had raised a bit earlier about the number of people who would be getting reparations. As she said, they've got nearly 100,000. Is there space to increase the number of people who qualify for reparations as long as they meet the requirements of the TRC's recommendations?
This is a very dicey question that is being raised there. In South Africa, to tell the honest fact, there are many people who suffered during the apartheid era. Now, the law as it stands, the TRC Act as it stands, it allows for people who appeared before the TRC and were accepted by the TRC as qualifying for reparations. Now, if people come, the TRC no longer exists. If people come to us, we are not the TRC. We are just a unit within the Department of Justice to help to carry out that. So if people come to us, we cannot change the law as it stands. These people need to, what can only be done is for Parliament to pass a new law or to make some changes to the law. And we know that the TRC, as it existed then, no longer exists. So it will be wrong of us, or will be acting against the law if we did things that we are not supposed to do. Now, I've spoken many times with Dr. Jobson, and we have all often advised them, why don't you go to Parliament? Because it's the Parliament that makes the laws. And it's easy. Most of these people, they have MPs, members of Parliament, who represent in Parliament. I mean, that's one of the solutions. They can ask them to try and revise, get this question of the TRC to be looked at once again and see what remedies can be found. We don't have the power. All we do is to implement what is there.
And very quickly, Dr. Seekoe, and in conclusion, overall, when you look at all the different areas of the recommendations, how would you rate progress?
Well, progress is there. Let me say, as I indicated, individual reparations. We are only left with about 2.6% still to be found and paid. And when it comes to the others, there is progress in health, education, etc., but the progress even there is not yet final because the regulations have not been signed off by the president. So once that is done, then it becomes much easier because in most cases, if somebody comes with a medical problem, we have to refer him to the Department of Health to do that. And the Department of also must comply with the necessary regulations that are there. This is what has been delayed. But I must say that substantial progress has been done. In fact, I suspect that before the end of this year, the three main regulations, that of health, education, both higher education and lower education, basic education, will have been finalized, and that of and also at the moment we're also working with the Department of Housing to finalize that.
We'll have to leave it there. Thanks for your time this morning.
you.
That's Dr. Seekoe, head of the TRC unit in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Way past 11, time for news with Asanda Mazzaunia.